Right. In today's session, we are going to focus on the topic on system planning and initialist investigation. And as I told you earlier, we are going to talk about different techniques, tools, which help you to make that, planning and initial investigation. So let's start then. Okay, right. So if you remember, we discussed last time about the different phases available in information system design. And the system planning is the first stage, right? So if you think it as a kind of a process where you have several phases, you can think the planning is your first phase. It's like planning something like, for example, if you want to build a house, you are going to plan, isn't it, right? Similar to that. So this will be the very first stage. Now, one of the things that we need to focus on, we develop these information system to help our organization. And we are helping organization to do their business, all right? For example, let's say we are developing an information system for our university. Then the idea is we need to help, which means the software system that we will build should be able to help our university to do its business, meaning like, in our case, it's a university. So starting from student registration, conducting examinations, releasing results, and finally you will be graduate, right? So up to that, we have to, support all these core functions. So ideally, when we develop information system, effective information system should help organizations to do their business processes and carry out its mission. So ideally, any organization, you have a mission and vision. So ideally, information systems should support that and also serve its stakeholders, which means all the different parties. For example, in the university setting, we have students, we have lecturers, we have parents, we have investors. So the information system support each and every one of these, which we call the stakeholders. Now, we know that when we develop or plan something, we call it strategically when you're planning, like long-term planning. We have to consider, purpose, the vision, the values, and then we have to develop the mission statement. And using this, it will lead to the goals, objectives, day-to-day operations, and the business results that affect company stakeholders. Now, for example, so when we plan the university, usually we have a vision of becoming, for example, number one non-state university in Sri Lanka, for example, right? So then, for that to meet that, you have different goals, you set objectives, and then that will boil down to day-to-day operations, which, for example, we can improve the quality of our delivery and so on. So finally, it should affect all the stakeholders, like the students, the lecturers, the parents, and the investors, and so on. Right. So that's about the initial planning. Now, when we do this, we use various different tools which supports making a decision. Now, SWOT analysis is one of the techniques that we use. We use SWOT analysis to identify, as the name says, S stands for strengths, W for weaknesses, O for opportunities and threats. So then we can perform this SWOT analysis to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in various different levels. You can see it as an enterprise level, which means as a whole, or you can focus on a particular project, right? Now, what it means is, for example, in our case, we are discussing about developing an information system. So what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? And what might be the threats? So you need to identify. So during this SWOT analysis, you can ask various different questions. For example, starting from the strengths, we can ask, okay, what are our strengths? and how we can use them to achieve our business goals, right? Okay, for example, if I related to this to the university, you can think as, okay, we have a very well qualified staff, right? So which means that they can contribute to provide the quality education to our students, which leads to achieve the business goals, right? One of the things is becoming a leader in the education. Okay, what are the weaknesses, right? For example, one thing we can think about, okay, now the university is located it far away from the from Colombo. So that could be a weaknesses because you have a lot of things happening around the city. So which might, be a problematic, right? So that might be one weaknesses, right? Okay, what are the opportunities and how do you plan to advantage them? So there was a lot of interest in, education nowadays, especially non-state. So that means there's a lot of interest in, learning in those who will not get the opportunities in the university. So they can come for non-state, for example. So how do you take the advantage of this? Okay, what are the threats? Okay, there are a lot of other universities comes in. Right? That might be a threat, right? Because there will be a lot of competition among the other universities. So how do you assess, manage, and respond to those risks? So similar to that one, so when you work on a particular project, you can focus on the project. So in my case, I was looking at a university level if you're trying to do an analysis. So similarly, SWOT analysis can be done in various levels. Right. Now, let me give an, examples. So in this particular case, I'm taking an example from the book. And this is uh, about a web development company, right? So they are looking at the company level, we call enterprise level. So they say what their strengths. Okay. So they say, okay, they have excellent web design staff. So that's a strength. Then low system analysis turnovers. Then recently upgraded network. So ideally, they have listed down their strengths. Okay. So what are the weaknesses as a web development, team? So what are the weaknesses they have? Okay, they will say, okay, they are still using some legacy system, old systems, and budget increase was toned down. So they have not got the budget. And documentation needs updating. So whatever the documentation says, quite old, it seems. So they have recognized those are as weaknesses in the enterprise levels. Okay, then they look at, opportunities, right? So they look at opportunities they have, and then they see this as an opportunity. Okay, it says, well, positioned for expansion. So it's a opportunity and can be first with the new software. So they are thinking about developing a new software system, and that might be the first of that kind. And then they will also think that there is a high potential for business to business call. Again, you can see that. So this is about the opportunities they have as a web design firm. Okay, what are the threats? Because this is outside, right? So remember, the strengths and weaknesses inside, it's about the company. And the opportunities and threats, actually, you compare with outside. So remember that I actually forgot in the beginning. So when you say opportunities, you compare with the outside, the other similar institutes, right? Similar teams, similar companies. Okay, what are the threats? So they say the aggressive new web competition, new rules. I hope that it's something to do with the finances. Other firms offer better benefits. So they will see different, threats available for them. So this is very, very important to identify this in the very beginning, because this will give you an idea what are the strengths and weaknesses you have in this particular case as an organization, and then what are the opportunities and threats. So this will lead for our next step, which is developing a business case, right? So I told you this is like enterprise level. Now, similarly, same analysis can be done in a very small level, right? Now, ideally, when you develop some product for the ownership, you can have a patent, right? So in this particular case, in this example shows you a corporate patent, which is a individual or a project level. You can say it's a small compared to the previous one we look at as a whole. So this is like individual level. Okay, so this particular analysis is focusing on a particular patent level. So it says the strength is patent covers valuable technology that we can use in popular products. So that is one of the weaknesses, or sorry, strengths. The weaknesses, it says that our patent has a limited life. So you know that when people take a patent, ideally they will have a time frame where they can actually, make use of the patent, right? Ideally, during that time, if somebody is using whatever the technology, you have to normally, for the owners, they have to pay a fee, right? So then after expires, anybody can use it. So that's what it says, that it's a weaknesses. Okay, now they look at the outside, compare with the others. And it says opportunity, we can use the technology in more products, license to others, seek more patents. Similarly, they have looked at the threats. Competitor might develop the similar technology, right? So people can develop similar technology without violating the what is covered in the patent, right? Okay. So compared to the two SWOT analysis, what I want you to highlight is the first one we look at as a whole. So you see a very big picture. And the same thing can be done in individual, even for a small project level. Right. Now that we have discussed the SWOT analysis ideas, I would like to give you a small exercise on SWOT analysis, right? So in this particular case, I want you to perform SWOT analysis for a non-state university. I already mentioned some ideas, right? And then compare it with the others. Let me give you a write-up. Okay, so thanks for helping me out to figure this out. So we were discuss about SWOT analysis for the non-state universities. So together with you, we have identified the strengths as new technology use, flexible, new updated curriculums, better facilities, international partnership, industry partnerships. So those are like as strengths if you focus on the non-state universities. Similarly, we have recognized weaknesses, high tuition fees, less recognition compared to maybe public universities, attracting good staff members, less funding for research. So those are like identified as weaknesses. Then opportunities, growing demand for non-state education within the country compared to like early days. Now people wants to, educate their children, even in, paying a fee for a degree. And hybrid education is also another thing that you will notice, and it's an opportunity. Specialized programs, corporate training programs, those are like we have selected as opportunities. Then there are threats as well, government regulations, especially like places like UGC, will frequently look after how people actually deliver the programs. High competition, for example, in Sri Lanka, we have 44 non-state universities and 19 state universities, which is a huge competition for these as universities. Then public criticism and mistrust. Sometimes we discuss about, like, for example, offering medical degrees in the private universities, and also brain drain, like qualified staff members will get opportunities in other countries and then they will leave the country. This is not only for non-state, even this is true for state as well. Right, good job. So I think we can move to the next topic then. Right, let's move on. Right, next topic that I'm going to discuss about making a business case, right? Now, we remember we were discussing about planning information system, and then we have to have a business case, which means like we have to have a reason, a basis for a new information system. So business case means we have to describe the project clearly. For example, let's say we are going to develop student support system for the university, right? So then you have to clearly describe what you are going to do, right? And also you have to justify why do you need it. And then also you have to make comparison. You have to find some monetary value, money value. That means you have to estimate the financial impact by developing information system. So that's what I want to highlight under business case. Right. Now, when you're making a business case, that means a proposal for a new information system, you have to ask a few questions, right? For example, why are we doing this project? Right? We talk about like developing information system. Then you ask, what is this project about? Right? So you are developing information system. So first question is, why are we doing? What is the project? How does the solution address the key business issues, right? Now the solution is we are developing information system. How information systems identify these issues? Fourth one, what is the cost? Because when you're developing information system, it takes time. You have to pay for the developers, you have to pay for the architect, you have to pay for the testers and so on. How long it will take? The time it takes to finish the project, right? Then will we suffer productivity loss during transition? Like, let's say you are developing a new information system, let's say student support information system. So that means once you implement this and going from whatever the existing system to the new system, will there be a productivity loss? What is the return on investment and payback period? Actually, we will discuss these ideas in a separate session. But the idea means like how long it will take to get back the money you spend, right? That's what called payback period. Return on investment means comparing total cost and total benefits, whether it's a profit and loss. Then, what are the risks of doing the project? So always doing a project or developing an information system, there's always a risk. So first of all, you have to identify what are the risks if you do the project. And on the other hand, you can have to ask, okay, what are the risks of not doing the project? Okay, if you do not develop a student support system, what might happen? Next is how do you measure? How do you measure whether this is a success or not? Right? And finally, what are the other alternatives? There are many other systems, right? You're proposing to develop an information system, but you can look whether there are any alternatives. Maybe you don't have to develop it because there might be already available solutions. So you have to focus on those as well. Right. Now that we have talked about the business case and kind of questions we ask in the business case, so let's focus on the information system project, because I told you like we are going to develop a information system, and the project is a system project, right? So we will have a project to improve the performance. For example, now let's say we are doing everything manually. Let's say you are trying to automate it, you can save time. So that means we can improve the performance. For example, if you think that, okay, if you do it manually, the student registration, let's say it will take half an hour. By implementing a software, if you can do it 10 minutes, so you have improved the performance. Then in some cases, you can provide more information. You can reduce the cost, right? You know that when you develop an information system, most of the time reduce the cost. Strengthen the control or provide better service. So always, if you have computer systems implemented, you will have a better service. Right. Now, there are other things as well we have to focus on. We call internal and external factors. For example, user requests. Because why we are doing a system project, sometimes it may be users requesting. For example, students might request, okay, we need to have a software system to handle student requests. Or sometimes it might come from the top management. Maybe top management can direct you to, okay, develop this. Right? So similarly, right? So there are various factors for this, system project. So here are the list. You have user requests, top management directives, existing systems, IT departments, software and hardware vendors, technology, customers, competitors, economy, government. So all this can be, right? The factors. Right. Now you can see whenever you need an information system, this request is for stronger controls, to reduce the cost, to get more information, better performance, improved service, more support. So you can see graphically present the system requests. Right. Now that we have talked about the system request, we'll move on to the next one, feasibility study. Now, feasibility means now we have identified what you're going to do. We want to develop an information system. But whether we can do this is what we have to evaluate with feasibility study. Now, when we say feasible, we have four things we have to focus on. Operational feasible. Operational feasible means, let's say you develop an information system, you have to have a staff to work with this system. Sometimes what might happen, like you don't have staff to work with these systems once you develop it. So therefore, operational feasibility means once you develop the system, you have to have persons or personnel to work with the system. Second one, technical feasibility. Now you have a request for developing information system. Sometimes we might not be able to implement that. There could be like technological limitations we have. So the technical feasibility is whether this could be doable with whatever the available technology here. We say technical feasibility. Third one, economic feasibility. Economic means whether you have money to, developing information system means you have to spend quite a lot of money, right? As an organization, whether it's economically feasible. So you know that software is not cheap, right? Software is not cheap. Okay, let me ask a small question there. Right, like we have discussed, we were discussing about the feasibility study, and I told you like during the preliminary investigation, analysis has to evaluate the system request and whether project is feasible. And when we say project is feasible, you have to focus on the operation feasibility. That means once you develop a software system, whether we have staff to use it, operate it, it's not only the users, sometimes you need IT staff, to support the services of the information system. Second one is the technical feasibility. Like sometimes you might need something, but we might not have the technology to develop this. So technical feasibility is another one. Third one is what we were discussing. Software is not cheap. You have to spend quite a lot of money on recruiting software developers, and you have to spend a lot more for software architects, for example. So you have to look for the economic feasibility as well. It's not just you purchase or the develop information system. You have to think about the maintenance as well, right? So software you purchase, it will not end, right? So you have to think about the maintenance cost. So every software comes with the service agreements. So always when you need updates, you have to pay for it, right? Last one, schedule feasibility. Schedule meaning like you might have like some time frame, and then whether you can actually finish within this time. So that is also important thing that we have to determine. Okay, the details. Operation feasibility means proposed system will be used effectively after it has been developed. If users have difficulty with the new system, it will not produce the expected benefits. So that's what we talk about the operational feasibility. Technical feasibility means the technical resources need to develop, purchase, install, and operate systems. Economic feasibility means the project benefits of the proposed systems. Weighted estimates cost usually consider total cost of ownership, which includes ongoing support and maintenance. I think I mentioned that. And finally, schedule feasibility, project can be implemented in acceptable time frame. For example, within like 6 months. So that's feasible. But if they say, okay, it might take 10 years, okay, that is not possible, right? Isn't it? Right. Now that we have discussed about the feasibility, the next one is preliminary investigation. What do you mean by preliminary investigation? We have to study the request and we have to recommend specific actions, right? So ideally what happens, like when you have a request, you have to get authorization, ideally from top management, to proceed with the developing information systems. Then analysis has to interact with the managers and users and gather facts about the problem, opportunity, project scope, constraints, project benefits, estimated development time, costs, right? And after analyzing all these, analysis has to report it to the management. Right, now let's look at what are the steps. First of all, you have to identify the problem, define the project scope and constraints. So always you have to focus on the project timeline. Then perform fact finding, gather facts. So when you're gathering facts, there are various sources available to find facts. Organization charts is one. Organization chart means any organization, you have an organization structure. For example, if I take the university, we have vice chancellors, then we have deans, we have head of the faculty, head of the departments, and then we have lecturers. So likewise, you will have an organization chart. So you need that information when you're developing information system, because you are going to give different facilities for different levels. For example, vice chancellor might have access to the summary data. Or when it comes to lecturers level, then the lecturers might have access to student information, where the students assign for the lecturers. Then review documentation, because we have to prepare various different reports. So you have to look for the documentation. You can observe operations. For example, let's say you are new to particular organization. Let's say we have asked to develop library information system. Let's assume that you don't know how library works or what are the operations within the library. Okay, just go and observe. So that's one way that, you find the facts, right? Then you can have things like interviews, like for example, in a library information system, you can interview the librarian, other staff. right? When you have small numbers. But then again, if you want to get information about the users of a library, maybe conducting interviews might not work because it takes time. So maybe then you use a survey. You can give a questionnaire, you can ask about the facilities available in the library, about the book collections, the service they provided, and so on, right? So remember that. That's also something that we have to think of. Then you have to analyze the project usability, the cost, because we talk about like how long it will take. You have to plan for that, right? And then benefits. Benefit means like after you develop the system, what are the benefits you are getting, right? Because it's improve the efficiency, it's improve the customer satisfaction. So then that meaning you are getting some benefits, right? So we have to assess those on as well. And then you have to schedule as well. Then evaluate the feasibility. I told you like you have to focus on the operational feasibility, technical feasibility, economic feasibility, schedule feasibility. And then you present this to the management, right? So that is what we call the preliminary investigation. So as a business analyst, you go through all these steps and finally you make a report and present it to the management. Right. So fact finding in a graphical representation, you can say it's about the problem and the opportunity, the benefits, the costs, and then you have project scope, right? And then finally you are reporting to the management. Okay, any question up to this point? Now that we have a scheduled feasibility, I told you like any software development, we have to have a time frame. Otherwise, it might not be practical, right? If you do not properly schedule it. So under this topic, under project management, we are going to look at different again techniques we can use to plan, right? So that's what we are going to discuss under this. Now, going from project management, this could be any project, but our focus is developing a software project, right? So we have planning stage, we have scheduling stage, monitoring, reporting, right? So it's the whole process of planning, scheduling, monitoring, and reporting. So when we say a success project, we know that it should complete on time within the budget. Within the budget means usually you allocate some money for the development. You should not exceed the budget. And at the same time, you should deliver a quality product. And by doing so, you are trying to satisfy the users and meet their requirements. So this graphic actually shows you that what we have discussed, we have to say project success. So there are a lot of constraints, and then you have to compare the cost, scope, the time. Right, project triangle. So when we talk about project triangle, we talk about three things: project cost, scope, and time. So this is the project triangle. We have cost, scope, and time. And then we have to have a good balance of this, right? So that means if the cost is too much, then you have a problem. Scope means the depth that you are going to develop a system. Again, that might be a problem. Timing, again, otherwise, right? So the idea what we say is when you see a balance these three, if you have changed it to one, then it affects the other two, right? So that's what you have to be very careful. Okay. Now let's see any project management. You have a project manager, right? So let's look at what project manager does in a software development project, for example. First of all, manager is responsible for the planning. When I say planning, you are planning a development of information system. So you have to identify all the tasks and then you have to estimate the time. For example, let's say software developer, we have to develop a database, isn't it? Let's say we want to develop a database system. So you have to have a plan for that. You have to identify all the tasks and estimate the time and also the cost. Once you do that, then you can schedule. Schedule means like we have to provide a time frame, right? Let's say take 2 months, from which months to the, so you have to plan for the directions, the time. So this is like creation of specific timetable. So we have Gantt charts, PERT, CPM charts, and so on. Then you have to monitor. You have to guide, you have to supervise, you have to coordinate the project team's workload and reporting. So you have to always regular reports to the management. Very, very important, right? So the planning, scheduling, monitoring, reporting, all these usually happens within the large software development, right? So what are the steps? There are 3 key steps. First of all, you create something called work breakdown structure. That means you are breaking down the work. Then you identify task patterns. Again, I will explain what task pattern is. Then you calculate the critical path. Critical path means if you make any changes to critical path, it affects the existing. Right, next. Now that we have talked about the work breakdown structure, let me give you a brief introduction to this. So work breakdown structure means we are breaking a project into smaller tasks, right? So you have to define what the task is, and then you have to have a duration. For example, let's say student support system, let's say student registration. So we have to be very specific who does that, right? And also the time and the cost. Now, let me give an example here. You can see there are 7 tasks. You have descriptions and then rough estimates of days. So you can notice the first task is reserved in the meeting room. It says the duration 1 day. Order marketing material, take 9 days. Brief managers, 2 days. Send out emails, 3 days. Burn sample DVDs, 3 days. Load the new software, 2 days. And do a dress rehearsal, just 1 day. So you can notice that is something that we have to develop. Then we have to incorporate the start and end, as well as precedent incidents. That means sometimes you do something. So that's what you will notice here as well. So you can see it's like Excel like chart you will see. You see the task name, duration, and then exactly it will tell. Right. So this is something we are going to develop. Right. Now let's look at Gantt charts. It's a horizontal bar chart and it represents the project schedule. Right. So the time is in the horizontal axis, tasks are in vertically. So you can show individual task groups, right? And then length of the bar, usually we say duration of the task. So that's what you notice here. Let's say we have a couple of tasks and these horizontal bars represent start and end. For example, you can see here we have February 23rd to March 11th. So it indicates the duration. And then you will notice the current date. The current date is ideally you plan it and you review a particular day. So let's assume that you are reviewing here. So what you notice is only 2 cases it's already started. You see there's a yellow line here, which manually identify this one. And that's what we are going to use. So what here you can see that the task 2 started, but it couldn't finish. So ideally, we expect it to be finished here. Similarly, if you look at the task 4, it goes beyond. This is the current place. And you can see that already task 4 has started. Right. Now that we have looked at the Gantt chart, let me introduce firm CPM charts. Right. So ideally, this is a graphical representations, and then we will use what we call the PERT chart to identify the overall duration. Right. Then using that information, the manager can identify what is the critical path. Critical path means there are some paths in the project development. If the path is get delayed, the whole project will get delayed. So let's look at how we develop, and then we can have a small exercise. Right, here are like some screenshots of how you may actually develop it. But let me give you some examples. In this case, we look at a PERT chart for website design process. So you can see there are some people are also listed here. What does what? For example, George started the design website. Took about 2 weeks. Then we have 3 people here. One write HTML, one contact the service providers. Next, create artwork. And then you can notice that after doing all this in parallel, then we test the software and then you upload the HTML. So you can see, so durations are also listed here. So for example, here it takes 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 0 days, 4 weeks. So you can notice this is the longest time it takes. So therefore, you can see the critical path, the path which determines the total project duration goes from this one to this and this and this. So we have task number 1, 2, 5, 6. So likewise, we should be able to identify the critical path in the PERT CPM chart. Right. Now we discussed 2 charts, Gantt chart and then PERT charts. So we can use Gantt chart to see what is happening in the project, but PERT charts are more useful. You can use it to schedule, monitor, and you can control the actual work. Right. Now, let's look at examples of developing this. First of all, you have to identify the work breakdown structure. That means identify the tasks, right? So, for example, conducting interviews, designing a report, selecting software. So all these are considered tasks. Then you have events, right? So for example, start of user training, conversion of system data, completion of interviews. So these are called events. So you can notice that you have events, right? And then you have tasks. So in the graphical representation, you will see, you start with the work on questionnaire approved, and these are like events, and they prepare questionnaires. So going from one event to the other. So it will clearly show you, right, how we can use a questionnaire and you use series of tasks and events to track the progress. The next thing is, once you identify the task, you have to identify the estimated task duration. It's something like this. Let's say you are conducting some interviews, you are collecting some facts. Remember, I told you about library information system. Let's say we are going to develop a library information system. So we have to gather information to develop the library information system. So we can contact a librarian, the staff, the users. So we need to know the time it takes, how long it will take to conduct the interviews, how long it will take to conduct all the surveys, right? So when you're conducting or estimating the duration, you will use this simple formula. So what is this formula? So you will get best case estimate. Then W is worst case estimate. P is probable case estimate. Divide by 6. So what it means is, let's say you are conducting interviews. Okay, how many days you need? So the best case, let's say 2 days. Worst case is, let's say 10 days. And the average one, let's say 4 days. So you have to assign the values, and then this will give you the estimated task duration. So whatever the activity, find the best one, find the worst one, find the average, put it to this equation. So that you can take it as a task duration. Right. Small exercise for you. Give me the answer. Right. So we have discussed to estimating in time, you look at for the best case, probable case, and the worst case. When we say best case, the best time duration is 20 days. So B is 20. Then W, the worst case is 34. Most likely is 24. So therefore into 24, divide by 6. That is 150 divided by 6. That is 25. Right. I got answers, correct answers from Kobevat and then Mahin. We have Netranjana, Sinad, Ahmad, Chista. Okay. So thanks for sharing your answers, and good that you got the correct answer. Okay, right. Let's go back to the slide again. Now that we have talked about the estimated time task duration, so let's move on. Okay, next topic. What are the factors affecting the duration? So when you're estimating the duration, you have to consider 4 factors: project size, human resources, and experience with similar projects, any constraints, right? So those are the things or factors you have to consider. Right now, for example, here you can notice we have identified some work breakdown structure and some durations. So we discuss how to estimate this one. You look for the best, you look for the first worst, you look for the possible ones, and then you can calculate the duration. Right. The next one we are going to see is task patterns. What do you mean by task pattern is like any task, you have something called dependent task. What you mean by that is if you have something like task 1, task 2, task 3. So ideally you start with some task and then after that you start another task. So, there should be some dependent task. And sometimes after finishing the task, you might have like start with multiple tasks. We call multiple successor tasks. And sometimes you have to complete multiple tasks to start the next one. We call multiple predecessor tasks, right? So you can see a lot of patterns. So let's see what patterns are available. Right. Then you have patterns and then you have boxes. Right. Now we draw boxes to indicate multiple different information. You can have task name, task ID, task duration, and you can also have start and finish dates. Let me give an example. So you have a task name, then you have a start date, task ID, finish date, task duration. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say conducting interviews. So you can put a task ID. Let's say it's the first one. So we put 1. Okay, how many it will take? Let's say 5 days. Let's say you start with the day 1, then you finish with day number 5. So similarly, you can put everything in a box like this, right? Then your task patterns, we already discussed, you can have dependent task. What do you mean by dependent task? a task must be completed after another. Then there could be multiple successor tasks. You can start several tasks at the same time. Multiple predecessor tasks. You wait until the multiple tasks are completed, right? So let me show you graphically this. So what you see is a dependent task. So you can see we have a first task, we have prepare outline. It takes 5 days. Start with day number 1, finish with day number 5. Then it start the next one, create document. So what you mean by this is, now to start this one, create document, you have to first finish this one. So that's why you see a dependent task. So once you finish day number 5, it starts with day number 6 and takes 9 days. So finish by day number 14. Right? So I hope you got the idea. That's the first one where you have dependent tasks. Second one, multiple successor tasks. What do you mean by that? Once you finish a particular task, if you start multiple tasks, we call multiple successor tasks. Now look at this one. It says develop plan, 30 days, start with day number 1, finish day number 30. So that means the two things here start with day number 31. So you can see this will take 30 days, goes from 31 to 60. This will take 10 days, goes from 31 to 40. Right? Ideally, after finishing this task, you start multiple tasks. So we call it as multiple successor tasks. Similarly, some tasks, to start some tasks, you have to finish multiple tasks. So this is called multiple predecessor tasks. To start this one, you have to complete both. For example, you can see here, update authorization takes 15 days, start date number 1 to 15. Second one, create job description, takes 5 days, goes from 1 to 5. Now, remember that to conduct interviews, you have to complete both. So look at the numbers. You start 1, finish 15, you start 1, finish 5. So ideally, when you're starting, you have to start in 16. Why? You have to complete both. And it takes 30. So therefore, it finished days 45. So make a notice these patterns, and based on that, you have to, provide the numbers. Right. So here are some example patterns, dependent tasks. So here we have task number 2. First, you have to finish task number 1. Look at this one. Okay, you finish task number 1, go to task 2. Then once you finish task 2, there are multiple successor tasks, 3 and 4. And after 3, you will have 5 and 6. You have multiple successor tasks. And this one, you have everything. You have dependent tasks, these 2 dependent. You have multiple successor tasks, these 2 multiple successor tasks. Okay, this one, if you look at, this is called multiple predecessor tasks. So that means to start task number 7, you have to first complete task number 5 and 6. Right. Now, we discuss about the task box, task patterns. Now let's look at something called critical path. Any project, there will be a path that you cannot delay. What do you mean by that? So any project going from start to end, you can find a path which determines the total project duration. So what do you mean by total project duration? So when you go from start to the end, where you cannot make any changes to the path, right? Then we call it as a critical path. Sometimes some of the events can have some time where you can actually make adjustment. Then this is called slack time. So the slack time means amount of time the task would be late without pushing back to the completion date. So that means sometimes you have some gaps and you can identify. And this is called slack time. Right. Small question for you guys. Small exercise. In this pattern project, you have noticed there are several tasks given for you. You have given the task name, and then you have given the IDs, you have given the durations. I want you to figure it out the day numbers. For example, if you start with the day number 1, the finish with day number 10, isn't it? Likewise, identify the number of days it will take to complete this one. Okay, shall we start then? Okay, just to summarize what we have done, we have identified the starting date as day number 1. This will take 10 days. So therefore, end date is day number 10, right? 1 to 10, you have 10 days, right? So in short, what we can do is you can add these two numbers and subtract 1. So 1 plus 10, that is 11, minus 1, that is 10. So goes from day number 1 to day number 10. So once you finish day number 10, then the next task, you start with day number 11. So this will take 30 days, 11 plus 30, that is 41, subtract 1, day number 40. So you start with day number 11 and it goes up to day number 40. So then you start two tasks. So therefore you can start with the day number 41, day number 41. This will take 5 days. So therefore you end with day number 45. This will take 25 days, goes by day number 65. Now to start this one, you have to complete both, which means that it will complete both by day number 65. Therefore you start with day number 66. Takes 30 days. That means you end with 95 days. So we can say total duration of the project is 95 days. And this path is called critical path, task number 1, 2, 4, 5, because if there's a delay on any of these tasks, will affect the total time duration. So there's no slack time in this path. But this one, for example, it's flexible. You don't have to start immediately. Maximally, you can delay by 20 days. So we can say you have 20 slack time for this particular task.